Hello, I am Shruti Pandey, a master's first year student from the University of Lucknow, and I am presenting the topic Anatomy of the Biological Timekeeping System.
It's very well known that the internal physiology and function of organisms, from cyanobacteria to humans, is very well intertwined with that of the geophysical cycle. Hence, they all have evolved their endogenous biological clocks for the anticipation of daily fluctuations of light and temperature. Now, these endogenous biological clocks actually make sure, by synchronizing to the environment, that an organism's internal biochemical, physiological, and behavioral processes are optimally adapted to the local environment. Having a look at the history of its discovery, it happened when Colin Pittendrigh and his associates proposed that all of the apparently complex changes in the time could be better understood by modeling these daily systemic changes as oscillators, hence giving an oscillator model for biological clocks. Now, in this hypothesis, he proposed that all organisms are capable of timekeeping. They share common mechanism of an oscillatory system with a duration evolved to match that of the significant environmental variables such as the cycles of night and day. Then he also said that the biological clock is a multi-component system. That means it is made up of one or more endogenous self-sustaining oscillators. That these oscillators actually get an input from the environment, and the output is actually temporal information that is converted into rhythmic behavioral or physiological responses.
Circadian clock has three components, an input pathway, a pacemaker, and an output pathway. The input pathway is the one which relays the external temporal information from the environment to the pacemaker. The pacemaker is the central oscillator in the endogenous clock, and it is responsible for maintaining timekeeping between the endogenous clock and the exogenous clock. Next comes the output pathway. The output pathway is the one which is the interpreter, and it interprets the temporal information that it gets from the pacemaker and further regulates the temporal activities of the metabolic and behavioral processes. Talk about the interaction of these components. It has been seen that the components that comprise of the input pathways actually interact with one another, and that similar applies to the components of the central oscillator and that to the output pathways. At the same time, this input pathway as a whole interacts with that of the central oscillator as a whole and interacts with the output pathway as a whole. Hence, a bidirectional feedback loop forms. Now, this feedback loop, it can be either transcription translational feedback loop, or it can be post-translational feedback loop. So now beginning with circadian clock in unicellular organisms. So in unicellular organisms such as Euglena, Neurospora, no such definite structure of circadian clock is seen, as I mentioned earlier, for the input pathway, the pacemaker, and the output pathway, and only there is just a single oscillator which generates the rhythm via membrane polarization. Here I'll be discussing just a bit about the components of the circadian oscillator that is found in the Neurospora crassa. So the Neurospora crassa has been a premier experimental organism for the study of circadian rhythms, and here there is a diagram that actually shows the autoregulatory negative feedback loop of Neurospora crassa, which actually forms the core circadian oscillator. Now this core circadian oscillator has the four components, mainly the FRQ protein, the FRH, the WC1 and the WC2. Now this WC1 and WC2 during the late subjective night actually dimerize to form a heterodimeric complex called DWCC, which is mainly involved in the activation of the FRQ mRNA transcription, which further produces the FRQ protein. This FRQ protein, once extensively produced, mainly during the late subjective day when the FRQ mRNA is at its peak and the FRQ protein also is at its peak. Uh, the FRQ protein gets extensively phosphorylated and it combines with FWT, as you can see in the diagram, and via the ubiquitination and degradation process, the FRQ protein is degraded. And as the FRQ protein level drops, and during the late subjective night, again this FRQ mRNA transcription gets activated, and hence the cycle of the circadian rhythm is generated in the Neurospora crassa. Further than talking about the non-mammalian vertebrates, it has been very less understood about the timekeeping system in them. And it has been seen that their clock interacts with at least one or more other clock, and together they appear to form a centralized timekeeping system. Hence the first line, that is, it's not just a single oscillator but a synchrony of multiple oscillators that actually maintain the circadian rhythmicity. Now, the major components of the timekeeping system in the non-mammalian vertebrates comprises of the retinal clock, the pineal clock, and the SCN in the brain. It was actually the birds in which it was first described in vivid details. And I'll be talking specifically about the bird timekeeping system in short. Here, as you can see in the diagram, you can see that's a complex system of multiple clocks. That means an independent input, pacemaker, and output pathway system is present, and it is present at a minimum of 3 levels, that is of the retina in the eyes, pineal gland, and the hypothalamus. Now, the input to the retina is basically via the photopigments, which are circadianally regulated. The input to the pineal is via opsin-based photoreceptor molecules and signal transduction mechanisms, and input to the brain is actually via the retinohypothalamic tract. Now, as the SCN which is found in the birds is not similar to that of the SCN that is found in mammals. Here in the two diagrams, you can see clearly the position of the SCN in case of mammals as well as in case of birds. In case of mammals, you can see two suprachiasmatic nucleus on either side of the third ventricle and above the optic chiasm. But in case of birds, you can see two different lettered SCN as small m SCN and small v SCN. Actually, the small m SCN stands for median SCN while small v SCN stands for visual SCN. So in case of birds, above the optic chiasm, there are two types of SCN actually found. This median SCN is found on either side of the third ventricle, while the visual SCN is found a bit laterally to the median SCN but above the optic chiasm. This median SCN and visual SCN as a whole contribute to the function of the central pacemaker for the circadian clock in birds. The circadian clock in mammals. The circadian clock in mammals, specifically in humans, is actually an Ouroboros. Ouroboros is a Greek word for a snake that eats up its own tail. Here, it signifies that the circadian system in mammals, specifically the humans, is actually self-regulated. That means its own signaling modulates its function. The major components that comprise the circadian clock in mammals is the retina and the SCN found in the hypothalamus. As I discussed in the previous slide, you would be remembering that on the either side of the third ventricle was the SCN nuclei present. Now, in the non-mammalian vertebrates, we talked about the pineal gland. The pineal gland was one of the major components of the circadian system in the non-mammalian vertebrates, but when it comes to the mammals, it actually lacks a self-sustained endogenous oscillator and hence have just the endocrinal function. The SCN, that is the suprachiasmatic nuclei, is the major site for the circadian pacemaker. As you can see on the picture on the right side, that the light inputs from the eye go to the SCN. The SCN further controls the ventrolateral preoptic nucleus, which is implicated in sleep. the pineal gland, responsible for melatonin secretion, and the peripheral oscillators. While you can see a negative feedback system from these outputs, that is the melatonin and the sleep, is arrowed towards the SCN, hence proving this fact of Ouroboros. So now I mentioned the point that SCN or the suprachiasmatic nuclei is a pacemaker in case of the mammalian timekeeping system. But how actually the humans got to know that this SCN is the central pacemaker oscillating at its own endogenous period and actually controlling the endogenous circadian rhythm? So it was back in 1970s when Robert Y. Moore and Irving Zucker and their colleagues actually observed that when electrolytic lesions were conducted in the rat's brain of the SCN, it actually abolished the circadian rhythmicity. Furthermore, the activity pattern that was observed by these two scientists and their colleagues was actually different, as Moore monitored the corticosterone rhythms and Zucker monitored the locomotor and drinking rhythms. Now, these initial milestones contributed to the fact that suprachiasmatic nuclei in the brain is the master circadian pacemaker. Furthermore, lines of evidences were included that in support of this fact, which included this first point as that when SCN was isolated, it was observed that the neuronal and metabolic activity rhythms persisted in it. This proved that neural input from the rest of the body and the brain was not necessary for the generation of oscillation in the SCN. Secondly, when SCN was abolished from an animal, that means lesion from an animal, and another SCN was transplanted from a donor animal, the recipient animal actually could not restore its circadian rhythmicity, hence supporting the fact. Now, talking about the location of the suprachiasmatic nuclei in the brain, it was by Richter in 1967 that when major electrolytic lesions were conducted in the anterior hypothalamus region of the brain, the circadian rhythms were abolished. Hence, we found, or it was discovered, that SCN is located in the anterior hypothalamic region. Explaining furthermore the structural placement of the SCN in the brain, here you can see in the diagram, over the top side is the brain in the sagittal view, and below it is actually the coronal plane, which is showing the two suprachiasmatic nucleus on either side of the third ventricle, and at the bottom of it is the optic chiasm. Hence, the exact location in the coronal plane of the suprachiasmatic nuclei is above the optic chiasm and on either side of the third ventricle. Now, this SCN or the suprachiasmatic nucleus is actually the size of a needle pinhead, that is approximately 1 millimeter cube, and is a group of tightly packed neurons lying above the optic chiasm and either side of the third ventricle, and comprises of roughly 10,000 neurons each. Now, the cell bodies of the neurons in this SCN are very small, that means about 8 to 10 micrometer in length, and the SCN, that is the suprachiasmatic nucleus, each of them is anatomically subdivided, and hence it is an heterogeneous nucleus. As you can see in the diagram, that small core region is there, and above that a shell region. Elaborating the structure of the core and the shell region of each individual suprachiasmatic nucleus, it has been seen that core and shell regions are actually densely packed with the somata of small neurons, and both the regions differ in the neurochemical content, in the differential expression of the neuropeptides, as well as they have different afferent and efferent connections to each of them. Now, there are various neurotransmitters that are expressed in the core and the shell regions, such as the GABA, serotonin, and glutamate. Now, GABA is the primary neurotransmitter which is inhibitory in function and is actually expressed by all the SCN neurons and is present co-locally with all of the neuropeptides. While the serotonin is from the Raphe nuclei and is inhibitory in function, the glutamate is actually from the retinohypothalamic tract and is excitatory in function. Now, talking about the neuropeptides, as you can see in the diagram on the right side, there depicts the neuropeptide distribution in the core and the shell region. Talking about first the shell region, you can see many black circles in there. Those black circles actually depict the neuropeptide, that is vasopressin, short form VP. Now, talking about the core region, you can see many red circles. These red circles are for the neuropeptides, vasoactive intestinal polypeptide, that is VIP, peptide, histidine, isoleucine, that is PHI, and gastrin releasing peptide, that is GRP. Along with these red circles, there are many yellow circles and some green circles as well. Now, these yellow circles are actually for the neuropeptide calbindin, that is CalB, while the green circles are for the neuropeptide somatostatin, that is SS. Now, talking about the inputs that SCN get via the pathways, the core actually receives the inputs from the retinohypothalamic tract and also from the midbrain Raphe nucleus, while the shell receives the input from the basal forebrain, cerebral cortex, hippocampus, brainstem cholinergic nuclei, medullary noradrenergic areas, and several other hypothalamic nuclei. Presence of neurons in the suprachiasmatic nucleus, certain other cells of different shapes and sizes have also been observed. These cells are actually called the glial cells. These glial cells are mainly concerned with the pacemaker function of the SCN, but apart from that, certain other accessory functions are also being observed, such as providing physical support to the neurons and synapses they surround, and also supplying essential nutrients to the same, participating in neurotransmission and regulating neurotransmitter clearance from the synaptic cleft, releasing certain factors which can modulate presynaptic function, and the glial cells can even release neurotransmitters all by themselves. So the glial cells and the neurons as a whole make up the SCN. Now, there are certain cells of the SCN that actually do not act as individual oscillators, or better to say, they do not generate the oscillations by themselves. Hence, the statement that nearly all of these cells can act as individual circadian oscillators. Now, one more thing, that the SCN has been observed to be much more active during the day compared to that of the pineal gland, that is much more active during the night. The pineal gland has been seen via the melatonin secretion, which is more during the night time, while in SCN it has been seen the electrical firing rate of the neurons has been very high during the day compared to that during the night. Now, in the previous slide, I mentioned about the various inputs that the core and the shell region receive in the brain. Furthermore, I would like to conclude my lecture here by explaining in short the main neural pathways that are actually involved in providing input to the central pacemaker from the environment. So basically there are three main neural pathways of afferent neurons that are shown in this diagram here with the orange and the blue arrows, and this input neural pathway is actually of the rat's brain, beginning with what these orange and the blue lines signify. The blue lines are actually for the non-photic input, while the orange line stands for the photic input. So the first neural pathway is the one that is from the retina to the SCN via the retinohypothalamic tract, that is RHT. And this neural pathway actually uses glutamate as its main neurotransmitter. Then second neural pathway is from the intergeniculate leaflet, that is the IGL, via the geniculohypothalamic tract, and this pathway uses neuropeptide Y as its main neurotransmitter. The last neural pathway is actually from the dorsal and median raphe nucleus, and this pathway is directed directly towards the SCN, and it uses serotonin and GABA as its main primary neurotransmitters. That's all for this lecture. I hope it was beneficial for all of you. Here are the references that I have used, and do give your feedback and doubts in the comment section below. Thank you.